Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to our 9th webinar in the Meet Melbourne 2020 online series brought to you by the University of Melbourne. And we have audience members from overseas and also across Australia as well joining us tonight, so a warm welcome to you all. This particular session covers education, but more specifically how to become a teacher at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education, or as we call it, MGSE. There are also some further webinars that will be coming up this week and next week as well, and I encourage you to check those out if you're interested in other courses. And there are also many webinars available online as well that you can go and have a look at if you're interested. I'm Chantel Shaw. I'm the student recruitment coordinator at MGSE, and I'm also tonight's moderator. I also have 3 current Master of Teaching students with me. And they'll be answering any questions that have been raised at the end of the webinar. Before I introduce them, in the spirit of reconciliation, the University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. A quick overview of the webinar includes myself, who will be taking you through the Master of Teaching suite and also the entry requirements, and then we'll finish with a question and answer panel with our student ambassadors who are studying 3 of our Master of Teaching streams. We have here tonight Bella Barker, who's doing the Master of Teaching Secondary. We have Han Tran doing Early Childhood and Primary, and we have Manazik Duangyang doing the Master of Teaching in Primary. So in regards to questions, many of you have submitted questions already when you registered for the GoTo webinar, which is fantastic. Thank you for that. If you have further questions throughout the session, you can use the chat function to submit those questions. And we have some staff working very hard in the background to answer those queries as the webinar progresses. And we will do our best to answer all your questions as we go. If we don't get to your question, feel free to contact us and we will be able to answer your queries later on. Just a quick reminder that this webinar is being recorded as well and will be available in the coming week to review for you all. So, the Melbourne Graduate School of Education, some key highlights are here listed. Number 1 being that we're the #1 school of education in Australia, which is nice. And I think even something that most of our audience members will be interested is that 96% of our graduates were employed within 4 months of graduating, which is a tremendous feat, particularly in the teaching field. The Master of Teaching also uses the evidence-based teaching model, which is unique to the University of Melbourne, which is another key highlight of MGSE as well. And all our teacher practitioners are trained in this model. One of the other key things that many of our graduates and indeed current students mention about MGSE is the level of support students get throughout their course and also when they go out to professional placement. So that's something that's very unique to MGSE as well that you may also consider if you choose teaching in your future. So many of you may be considering your future study, including your undergraduate or bachelor degree, and also thinking about teaching as well. So at the University of Melbourne, we offer our teaching degrees at a master's level, which means that you do need to have a bachelor degree or an undergraduate degree before studying teaching. So we don't offer teaching at a bachelor level, just to let you know. This slide here kind of gives you a visual representation of what that looks like, where you do your undergraduate and then you come to MGSE to do your Master of Teaching. And then, of course, you can go on to your teaching career. You can, of course, as well do a bachelor degree at another institution and then come to MGSE to do your master's. We would, of course, love for you to come to university for the entire of your study, but that is also an option as well. So we have 4 specialisations for the Master of Teaching. We have early childhood and primary, and secondary as well. So I guess this model works for us because you will, when you're undergraduate, you learn a lot of the content that you need to know before progressing on to the Master of Teaching. And this is particularly true for secondary, where in your undergrad, you learn all the content that you would be teaching in your secondary subjects that you would teach at secondary school. And we call these learning areas. They're things like biology, chemistry, English, maths, those kinds of subjects. And we'll talk a little bit later, more about this later on, but just gives you an idea about how you can progress through the University of Melbourne to ultimately study the Master of Teaching. Most of our courses are 2 years in length, but there are a couple of other options that we offer as well, which I'll discuss later on. And there are also some pathways that students can take from high school into their undergrad and then into their Master of Teaching. The first one we have is called the Graduate Degree Package, and that's for high achieving domestic or international students who complete an Australian Year 12 or an international baccalaureate. The second is our guaranteed entry pathway, and that's more of a streamlined pathway for students who complete a University of Melbourne undergraduate degree and are interested in going to the Master of Teaching directly after their University of Melbourne undergraduate degree. These two pathways are available online to get more information about that, so I encourage you. So that was the Graduate Degree Package and the Guaranteed Entry Pathway. So you can go online to find out more information about those. When you do choose an undergraduate degree at the University of Melbourne, it does allow you to study some breadth subjects as well. And while MGC doesn't offer undergraduate teaching degrees, we do offer breadth subjects, which is fantastic. So it gives you an opportunity to investigate and explore the education field, whether that's teaching or maybe an adjacent field in education, but you can actually study subjects in your undergraduate degree. So you can get a feel if maybe teaching's for you, because we do also offer placements as part of that there as well. Bella also did one or two of our breadth subjects, so if you have questions for her later on that, feel free to submit them in the chat. So on the slide here, we have a couple of the different tracks. We call them breadth tracks that you can do, and they're all, there's a couple of units per those tracks. So if you want to go through the arts track, you could choose a couple of breadth subjects there as well, and you would study them in your undergraduate degree before coming to the Masters. So you can keep that in mind as you're choosing your course and your subject. Here's an overview of our Master of Teaching suite. So as I mentioned before, there's 4 different specialisations: early childhood primary, and secondary. There is quite a bit of information there for you, which you will be able to review in the end, when the webinar is available later. But some key things to note here is that there are a couple of different options in terms of course duration for early childhood, primary and secondary. And just be mindful that with the part-time versions, that is for domestic students only, but there are a couple of different options there depending on what students are interested in. And also we've listed the age ranges according to the specialisations as well, if you're curious to see what school age ranges you'll be teaching. We've got them listed there as well. We always have a lot of questions about our accreditation and also registration associated with our courses. So our early childhood course is accredited with ASIQA, which is the Australian Children's Education and Care Quality Authority, and that's the early childhood accreditation body. And our early childhood, primary and secondary programs are all accredited with VIT, the Victorian Institute of Teaching. So all students who complete these courses can get provisional registration with VIT. Oh, and one more key thing to note for domestic students, there are Commonwealth supported places for all these streams available, and also HECS help loans for eligible students as well. So entry requirements, another thing that is always very important when you're looking for further study and indeed any study. So the first thing, as I mentioned before, you do need to have a completed undergraduate degree before coming to the Master of Teaching program. So whether that's a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Commerce, Bachelor of Science, there's a range of different undergraduate degrees that you can do, but you do need to have a completed one before applying. Students also need to meet English language requirements. They also need to complete the Teacher Capability and Assessment Tool, which is called TCAT, which is basically an online test that you do, and it judges and assesses your suitability for teaching, your predisposition for different activities that would be related to teaching. It's nothing too scary, and you don't need to prepare for it. It's just a series of questions that we do as part of our entry. This is also taken online as well at any time. The last thing we have for students interested in a Master of Teaching Secondary is that you do need to qualify for 2 learning areas. So these learning areas are the subjects you teach in secondary school. This is really important because when you're choosing your bachelor degree, that is what dictates what you can do for your learning areas. So for example, if you're thinking of teaching sciences in high school, you really need to consider doing a Bachelor of Science and choosing subjects in the areas that you actually want to teach later on. Simple examples for this is doing a Bachelor of Arts and you do subjects in English and history to teach English and history, or maybe a language, but you do need to do those studies at a bachelor degree, or you can do other studies at master's and graduate and that kind of thing, but you do need to make sure you have covered the content in your studies to be qualified to teach in 2 learning areas for the secondary. We have a lot of information available on this on our website, so feel free to go and have a look there. And of course, you can always contact us if you're concerned about which bachelor degree to choose as well. Here's just a quick list of all the learning areas that we do offer as part of the Master of Teaching course. And you can see there many of these are available in your secondary school, I'm sure. So it's good to keep in mind different areas that we offer. If they're not listed here, we don't offer them in the Master of Teaching Secondary, but this is a pretty comprehensive list. We also do offer a service of doing some pre-assessments of your studies to see if you would qualify for learning areas as well. We're one of the only universities who do this, so it is a nice little offering for you, and you can always send us an email expressing your request to get your academic transcript looked at there as well. So we're coming to the end of the course information here, and we do have a lot of questions around satisfaction from students, and we do have quite a high satisfaction across our courses from our graduates. And we also have questions around if, for example, students are interested in teaching, but maybe what other career options they have as well. We have a lot of qualified teachers who now work in policy formation, education research, evaluation research, in children's services coordination, especially for our early childhood students, and a range of other areas as well. And we also have a lot of teachers who teach for a little bit and end up in these professions earlier rather than later, because they're looking for a different challenge or a different kind of career. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is that our Master of Teaching program does also prepare you for other careers as well. So we have come to the end of the course information. Now, I am very aware that I've gone through that information very quickly. As I mentioned, we do have all this information available online for you to have a look later on. But we will come to the student panel part of the presentation, which I'm sure is for many of you the most interesting when you actually hear about from our current students in these specialisations. So I will introduce the panel again to you all, so you can see their faces. Okay, so I'll introduce them again as well. We have Bella Barker in Master of Teaching Secondary, we have Han Tran in Early Childhood and Primary, and we have Manazik Duangang in Primary Teaching. So to kick off this section, I'll get each of our current students, who are also ambassadors as well, to introduce themselves, give a brief overview of the course that they're studying, why they chose MGSE, and their teaching degree as well. And maybe share some reasons about why you became a teacher as well, which may help some of our audience members if they're not sure that they are thinking of teaching or if it's for them. So let's start with Han, if you'd like to go first.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we've got
Yeah.
you. Great.
So my name is Han Chan, and I'm doing Master of Teaching Early Childhood and Primary. The reason I choose this is basically I really want to become a teacher. But I did my undergrad in a very irrelevant um, major, which was finance and banking. And then I volunteer as a teacher during my study. And then I decided that I wanted to become a teacher and I wanted to be trained to become a teacher. That's why I came to MGSE. And I never regret my decision. The reason I choose to study two majors instead of one is that I want to broaden my choices. I want to also teach the young children from primary, from early childhood, and the students from the primary stream. And also, there is an insight that I realized that if you study the first year about early childhood, it will give you a stronger foundation for you to become a teacher in primary. And I learned so much about the thing, like about how the children develop from very young age. So I think it's kind of prepare me for teaching primary. That's what I think. And yeah, so basically that's it.
Thank you very much. Bella, we'll go to you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Bella and I'm studying the Master of Teaching Secondary. My learning areas are psychology and languages. For my language, it's French. And I actually completed my undergraduate studies at the University of Melbourne as well. I did a Bachelor of Arts majoring in psychology and a diploma in languages in French. I also did a Brett subject from MGSE, which I really enjoyed, which was called Spontaneous Drama, Improvisation and Communities. So that was a lot of fun, and I just found it was a really welcoming vibe from MGSE, which is part of the reason why I chose to study here, and also because I really enjoyed my experience at the University of Melbourne too, and of course, as it being the #1 in Australia, great reputation as well.
Thank you for that. And Manazik, we'll go to you next.
Hi everyone, my name is Manasik and I'm studying the Master of Teaching in Primary. I came from a different background as well, similar to Han. I studied science as my undergraduate and I completed this at Swinburne University. And part of the reason why I chose to do my Masters of Teaching at MGSE is because, well, I actually had a lot of colleagues recommend studying here. I was working at a local high school and I heard wonderful things about how much support you get at MGSE. And of course, it's the #1 program in Australia for teaching. So I looked into it and similarly to Han, I don't regret my decision. I am now almost a year into my course and received a lot of support and I'm very proud of being a student here.
Great, thank you very much. We did have a question from the audience, which is basically, what is the shortest pathway to teaching at Melbourne? This is probably something that I can answer. Basically, you'll do your undergraduate degree first, so typically that's a 3-year degree, and then you could choose your Master of Teaching program. And as I mentioned before, there's a variety of different durations that you can choose. So depending on which special stream you're looking at, with early childhood, primary, and secondary, you can choose your different streams there. So hopefully that answers that question. But you can go and review the slide with all the courses and the durations there to basically work out your plan there. I will go back to the panel. And another question that we have is, do you have a specific memory or something that just gave you that impetus to become a teacher, and particularly interested if this was in high school and potentially if you had, that favorite teacher or potentially a teacher who you wanted to be like or made you choose teaching as a career. And Manasik, we'll go with you first.
Sure. In high school, I had a very interesting experience because I went to two different high schools, and one was regional, the other one was more centrally located to the city. And the experience I had regionally was very positive. I felt like I was part of a wider community in the school. So, of course, as regional areas are, they're more intertwined with the community. And the experience I had specifically to the teachers around me was that they did make me feel like we were part of this larger circle, and inevitably we were. And I learned through my experience at MGSE that really the foundation of education and learning is creating a community and a healthy space where people can feel connected. So I think that would be my connecting experience there with wanting to become a teacher, and why I went ahead and did so.
Great, thank you. Bella, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, sure. For me, I definitely had some really inspiring teachers, especially in my final year of school in year 12. And so I had been thinking about teaching as a pathway for me. And then really the idea of it kept sort of following me around because I had some people ask me to tutor them when I'd finished high school. And then I also became a dance teacher and I really enjoyed doing that as well. So that kind of further inspired me along. I also started off with a different pathway. I worked in communications and public relations before teaching too. And yeah, I'm really glad I've come here to study at MGSE because it's just been wonderful. And yeah, definitely some great teachers having an influence on me.
Great, thank you. And Han, how about you?
Okay, so actually, I didn't have much memory about the teacher in my university, but the reason I wanted to become a teacher was that I didn't have a good teacher back in secondary school. That's why I wanted to become a good teacher for the students, and I met a lot of inspiring teachers. In my first year of MGSE, I met a lot of wonderful lecturers. They were all so supportive. Like I was really overwhelmed of how supportive and how kind they are, and yeah, like they encouraged me to become a teacher more after I already made my choice. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. We have some questions from the audience about placement. Specifically, what's placement like for each of you, especially if you've done some placement, depending on where you are in your degree, and what kind of support have you received so far in your placement? We'll start with Manasik because I think you're in second year, aren't you? Oh, Manasik, we're not able to hear you at the moment. We'll just make sure we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
I am at the end of my first year because I'm doing the course part-time at the moment, which is very great. The flexibility has been really good at MGSE lately. So to answer your question, oh, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Sure, it's relating to your placements. So what's your experience has been like, and also the support that you received during placement?
Yeah, placement. I've had one placement so far in my first semester, which was really positive because as soon as you start, you get straight into placement and get a really good view of what you're gonna eventually get into. Um, so it was overwhelming, but because we were very well supported and quite a connected cohort, the experience was overall positive. We were connected with a teaching specialist from the university and a mentor teacher at the placement school. And those two people are critical in your placement experience, and they are very involved. You are at the school with the mentor teacher, and you have a teaching specialist that links your experience at the placement back to the course. So it is very well supported. And I had a great time. I was teaching prep, so it was very busy and very new for me because my previous experience in the past was working at a high school. But the experience was absolutely, it ingrained so much skill in me and made my decision to continue with the primary course even more solid. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Bella, we'll go to you for a secondary perspective.
Yeah, sure. So the way it works in the Master of Teaching Secondary is generally you have a few weeks of classes, Monday to Wednesday, and then you start going into your school on Thursdays and Fridays for a couple of weeks. So it's nice to have that transition period, and then you move into block placement. So I've completed part of my block placement, which is of course paused at the moment. But yeah, just as Manazik was saying, just the support is absolutely fantastic. So you have a clinical teaching specialist from the university, plus one mentor teacher at the school. In my case, I actually have two mentor teachers, and you also have generally other students with you from the course, so you can also share ideas as well. I found placement to be like an incredible experience. I think everyone gets a little bit nervous, I suppose, on the first day, but yeah, you're just so welcomed, and there's always a student teacher coordinator at the school too, who is like your point of call and helping you get set up there as well. Yeah, and you feel definitely well prepared in your classes, because I think sometimes you think, oh, the placements are so soon, but you just cover so much in the first few weeks, and you feel really confident and ready to head into your placement.
Great, thank you. And Han, have you had an early childhood placement, and how did that go?
Actually, I had three placements before, because I'm halfway through my second year. And I must say the first placement was really overwhelming, because like you went to placement immediately after you started the course. But it was really fun for me, because you got a chance to apply the theory that you learned during the school and to your placement, because like it's kind of boring if you spend the whole week studying just about theories, right? So like placement is like giving you a chance to actually apply what you learn to practical practice, which I think is really, really nice. So I was kind of sad that we couldn't do placement on this difficult time, but I really enjoy placement. I believe that is one of the best thing about like MGSE, and also the CDS, like the CDS of the university. They are really supportive to you. So if you have any concerns, whatever problems that you may encounter, you can just ask them, and they are really supportive and nice to you. Yeah. So.
Excellent. We've had a couple of placement questions about where students can be placed. So there is a variety of schools that we have in our network that we do send students out to. And you can do city or suburban-based placements, but we also offer rural ones as well. So you can have a look online for specific placements that we have, which also include overseas placements as well. But it just depends on the information you give to our placements office, because our placements office does organise all the placements for you. So you can always let them know if you're interested in other areas rather than city-based schools as well, which is great. So I'll just see if we do have any more questions from the audience that we can look at as well. We have a question from the audience asking, what's the most rewarding or challenging part of your course or your placement or the experience in your course so far? Bella, we'll start with you.
For me, definitely the most rewarding part has just been feeling like I'm part of such a team. I think that you get a lot of support, obviously, from the teaching staff, but also from your peers in the course. It just feels like everyone's part of one big team, and it's great being able to, when you go out on placement and you can apply the theory and that you've learned in class together, and you run your first lesson. That's generally just such a rewarding moment. I think it will be for pretty much everyone is planning your first lesson and delivering it, and being able to share that experience with other people. In terms of challenging aspects, for me, probably the most challenging part was, especially at the start, getting used to time management, because especially at the start of the degree, it can be quite busy because you have classes at uni, plus placement, plus assignments to work on. But of course, everything's staggered so that you don't generally have a lot of things due at once, and it is good practice because time management is just an essential skill really for life. So even though it is challenging, I'm grateful for having the opportunity to practice.
Excellent. Manazik, any thoughts there?
I would definitely agree with Bella in regards to the time management. Yeah, especially at the start of the course, it can get really busy very quickly. But on the flip side of that coin is that you do immerse yourself in the course because it is very busy, and in turn you really grasp a lot of concepts quickly, and because it's heavily supported as well, and you've got placement that is scheduled around the same time as you do start, it's aligned very well. So that busyness does translate to practice really quickly. And I would say a highlight for me definitely was being taught by just world-renowned teachers and people who have been in the practice for a long time and have pulled amazing theories out of their practice and are now in front of us teaching us. That's definitely a highlight for me.
Great. And Han?
So I agree with you both about time management, because I found it so difficult to balance between assignments, placement, and going to university while completing deadlines in the weekends as well. But the most rewarding thing for me is the relationship that you may build with your students or the children. I had 3 placements, and I woke up going to placement. I felt extremely happy every day just thinking about seeing them and having the chance to teach them, and they are really nice, and they really love you and they love learning. So whenever you bring something new, you bring your idea to class, they are all happy, and just looking at their face is just really really something special to me that keep me going on for this course.
Yeah, great, thank you. We have another question from the audience for you all. Do you have any words, some advice or recommendations, maybe inspiration that you'd give the audience for anyone who is considering becoming a teacher? Han, we can start with you.
The advice to become a teacher?
Yeah.
Is that the question? So the only advice that I'm going to give you is that you don't need to worry too much about whether you are capable or not, because you're really capable, and just don't believe it. Don't believe that you are not good enough to teach math or English, even though English is not your first language, just like mine. I didn't do my bachelor in here, but I was confident enough to enroll in this course, and still coping up with everything. So just really just believe in yourself, and just follow what you really want.
Great. Bella, how about you?
For me, yeah, I think probably some advice and inspiration is really just 3 words, which is go for it. I think just throw yourself into it, learn as much as you can, and you're working with a great team of staff and other students. I think just put in as much effort as you can, and I really have a mindset that it's all about, even though you're a teacher, you're always still learning, and it's always looking for ways that you can improve and become even better, and critically reflect on your practice as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And Manazik?
Yeah, those were really good pieces of advice. Just to add on to Bella's piece of advice there, yeah, absolutely go for it. I would say that teaching is such a personal experience, and so is learning. So I would say focus on building relationships and connecting with the students and the people around you, which is something that everybody can do. So it is not about the strategies and the concepts. So you can teach math, you can teach English, you can learn to teach all of these subjects. The foundation to all of those is connecting with the students and connecting with the people around you. So I think absolutely anyone can do it, and MGSE is very supportive.
Excellent. Thank you. We have another question, which is more for myself rather than the students. Just to let you all know, there are research pathways as well with our Master of Teaching programs, with most of the versions or modes that we offer. So in the early childhood, primary and secondary, we do have research pathways where students can choose to do subjects that will prepare them to potentially progress into a PhD or other master's programs with the University of Melbourne at MGSE. So the main thing to think about there is to ensure that you've got the 75 plus WAM, so your average grade for that time there. If you are interested in that, you can go to our website and have a look there. It may be quite a bit into your future for many of the audience members with us now, but if you are interested in further study in teaching or the education area, it's good to think about there as well. Another question we have from the audience is how many intakes we have for the Master of Teaching each year. And as probably another question for me, basically we have 1 intake per year, and that's for the start year of every year. So for example, our next intake is for semester 1 2021, and that's the same every year. So we don't do a mid-year intake for our Master of Teaching suite. We have another question for the panelists that we have with us here. Do you have an idea about where you would like to perhaps get a job later on, and when you finish your course? And do you think you'll stay in Victoria or Australia, or potentially go overseas and teach there? So I think we can start with you.
After I finish the Master of Teaching course, I hope to get a job as a classroom teacher, and I would stay in Victoria. I've used the Victorian curriculum in a lot of my studies, and I think it'd be a great experience to embed and practice that. But I'm very open-minded and have long-term goals around teaching overseas, but also I have a great interest in education policy. So the doors are open with many things, but I do hope to start in a classroom.
Great, Han. How about you?
Hi. So I hope that I also get a job as a teacher in Victoria or other regional areas or other places. Like, I really keep my option open, even coming back for to become a teacher is also a great option for me, because back in my home, there are not many qualified English teachers. So I think it would be a great choice for me also. So.
Excellent. So a lot of options, I think. And Bella, how about you?
Yeah, for me, I've just started my course this year, so I'm not entirely sure yet And it's actually hard to decide because I'm just enjoying the whole experience. And even, you know, with 2 learning areas, like I really enjoy both my learning areas of French and psychology. I think I will probably stay in Victoria to start, but who knows where the future might take me. And, you know, I think it'll be great to be going out on placement and going to lots of different schools as well.
Great. Thank you all for that. Just having a quick check to see if we've got any additional questions coming through here. There was a question just to clarify TCAT, which is more for myself, I think. So TCAT is the online assessment tool that we use. Other institutions also use tests as well, so it's becoming a bit of a standard across all the education faculties. But basically, it's an online assessment that students need to complete, and all 3 students here would have done that, it as well as part of their course. It just runs through a series of questions. Some of it's personality based, some of it's basic English and numeracy questions, some of it's behaviour. For example, what would you do in this situation? And it basically just gives a score at the end, which it gives us some further information about you and your suitability for teaching as well. As I mentioned before, it's nothing to be too concerned about, and you don't need to practice for it or anything like that. You just need to complete it and pass it as part of your application process. Of the ambassadors here, do any of you 3 want to have or share your experiences with the TCAT or how you felt doing the TCAT in preparation for your application? Bella, it's probably the freshest for you, I think, being a first year.
Yes, yeah, and actually it was only recently that I was able to see my results from the TCAT too, which was quite interesting to have a look back on. And yeah, I think, look, it's not scary or anything like that. And it's actually quite interesting, even just to have a look at the results and get some insights into, you know, what you're like and your sort of like your strongest areas and how you think. Like, it really gives you an insight into how you think, which can be useful for developing your teaching practice. And because the questions are so varied, you know, it's lots of varied questions and lots of interesting questions too. So yeah, definitely not something to be concerned about at all.
Great. I think we'll start wrapping up there. I will just say a very big thank you to our panel members for helping us out. So we've got Manazik, Han and Bella. Thank you again for joining us and telling us about your experiences in the course. I'm sure everyone in the audience can really benefit from your experience. And I would also like to thank our audience members for attending as well and for submitting your questions. It's great that everyone can interact this way as well. And hopefully I have been able to answer, and the students as well, most of your questions throughout the seminar. As I mentioned, that we do have all the information that we've touched on is available online. And we also recommend if you do have questions that maybe weren't answered today, or you find you have more questions down the track, feel free to reach out to us at the University of Melbourne website with the Connect to Us, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions and speak to you that way. Just one final thing, because we are a graduate school, I just want to reiterate again that we don't offer teaching at an undergraduate level. We do only offer it at a master's level, so you do need to complete your bachelor degree first and then come to us to do the Master of Teaching program. Just keep that in mind when you're choosing your undergraduate degree, and then keep us in mind for your postgraduate study with the Masters, and we hope to see you potentially in a few years. Thank you again to our panelists, and I hope you all have a great night.